Hello and welcome to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson and produced in the studios of WRMI Shortwave in Okeechobee, Florida. I'm Jeff White. This is edition NWS 612 for release on Sunday, November 15th, 2020. And now, from Nepal, we go to nearby India. And we have an email from Sandipan Basu Malik, who writes on behalf of the Indian DX Club International in Kolkata, West Bengal. And he says that the Asian DX Review monthly newsletter from the Indian DX Club International is back again. After a long gap, we are pleased to release the digital edition of the much popular newsletter, he says. And he attaches a copy of the latest edition. There's a very interesting article on the front page, in fact, of the latest Asian DX Review. Actually, this is the October edition, the first resumed edition. And it's by Dr. Supratik Sanatani. And I want to read most of this article to you today here on Wavescan because it's very interesting. Look at the sort of the recent history of DXing. He says, when the Asian DX Review last rolled out of the press in 1990, DXing was different. There was no internet. We had to eagerly wait for the DX program like DX Jukebox, later renamed Media Network from Radio Nederland, and other DX programs to copy down the tips for DX hunting. Once in a week, we would get the sunspot numbers. DX magazines, like our Asian DX Review, reached people by post. Digital frequency readout receivers were already there, but they were beyond the reach of the average listener. One couldn't buy radio receivers from the Internet, and imports were prohibitively priced. We would ogle at the reviews of the Yaesu FRG-7. The bands were very much full of broadcast signals, and international shortwave broadcasters like the BBC, Voice of America, Radio Moscow, and Deutsche Welle were the powerhouses, besides other national and missionary broadcasts. There were a few clandestine stations, too, like Mujahideen-e-Khalq, or stations from South Sudan. Man-made radio noise was much less because incandescent lamps were the mainstay, and CFL had not yet arrived. There were no mobile phones, no mobile phone towers. During sunspot lows, the medium waves were full of Japanese regionals on lucky days. The tropical bands were all full of Indonesians in the evening. Africans appeared late evening and night, and then the Latins in the early Indian morning. The discerning DXer then logged exotic stations like Cook Islands, which Pradip Kandu did, and the antenna was a piece of copper wire. The reception reports were still sent by mail and often with IRCs, International Reply Coupons, to facilitate a QSL card. QSL cards arrived by post, often with a pennant and other goodies like exciting stamps. DXers met in person over small group gatherings, through the landline, and through bulletins. Then there was a hiatus of 30 years, during which period DXers did go on listening, QSLing, face-to-face meetings, DXpeditions, and communicating through land phones. The couple of exciting DXpeditions along the Bay of Bengal did keep us enthused about DXing. Then came the Internet. It developed slowly but steadily and changed the very face of DXing. DXing was gently turned upside down. Where are we today? As the Internet grew, it took a toll on radio broadcasting, especially on shortwave. As you could get instant news online and listen to a distant station through live streaming, shortwave stations began to close down. Deutsche Welle is an example. It ran its Trincomalee relay station through the thick of the Tamil Eelam movement and beamed in excellent signals to Africa, the Far East, South Asia, but closed down its own services in 2015 and handed it back to the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, who now rent out airtime from there. The power-guzzling shortwave transmitters were a poor second to FM and Internet and began to close down. Today, the national broadcasters have shortwave broadcasting mainly focused to the African continent. The void was taken up somewhat by the missionaries, and it isn't uncommon to find Transworld Radio and Adventist World Radio broadcasting from relay stations of national broadcasters around the world. Medium wave, however, still remains relevant to cover thinly spread communities over great distances, and long wave in Algeria, Mongolia, and Romania survives for the same reason. As there was an explosion of household electronic devices, the menace of man-made radio frequency interference took on an ugly proportion. To receive the simple BBC blaring to India from relay stations in Singapore and Thailand, one would need a good receiver and an antenna, and the shortwave signal would have to rise above the radio frequency interference. With the rise of Internet and global trade, DXers in India, just like the rest of the world, could get the state-of-the-art radio receivers, sometimes delivered right to their doorsteps. As the number of DXers dwindled, the manufacturers like ICOM and Alinco stopped making lower-end receivers like the R75 and the DX R8T. In the meantime, the entry of software-defined radios, or SDRs, was a revolution. From the lower-priced RTL dongle to the Perseus, suddenly PC or laptop matched the performance of the best communication receiver. You did not need to stay up late to scan the band for that Vietnamese regional, because your SDR would switch on, scan the entire band, ready for you to listen at your pleasure. QSLing took a different dimension altogether, with EQSLs now the rule. Babul Gupta's EQSL of LRA 36 in Antarctica was a big sensation in the Indian media, and it brought in a good number of new hobbyists. The sunspots played a spoiler, too. The prolonged sunspot low of solar cycle 24 pushed the shortwave bands out of function for some time, but medium-wave DXers could relish distant catches. The shortwave broadcasts in the tropical bands were almost gone. Bulletins of the past were replaced by Facebook and WhatsApp groups, which could communicate instantly. Then there are personal and group blogs, and the flagship DX clubs kept up their presence online, like the Australian Radio DX Club. Glenn Hauser, with regular monitoring posts, and the Standing Tall World Radio TV Handbook have also kept DXing alive. S. Aoki's exhaustive frequency list would give you the latest radio frequency reference you wanted, just as a medium wave list would. On the broadcasting side, DRM is the new kid on the block, and many broadcasters now have DRM simulcast. The standalone DRM receivers have had their own hardware issues, but the SDR fills the gap. However, this mode is yet to catch up. So where does the Asian DX Review Digital Edition fit in? It now comes with our own flavor of DX reporting. We are here to give a life to those frequency lists and schedules and encourage others to speak. Our aim is to keep DX alive and speaking. That article by Dr. Supratik Sanatani in the latest edition of the Asian DX Review, the October edition, actually. Indian DX Club International, which publishes it, is an informal association of DXers, mainly from India. Headquartered in Kolkata, the club brings out the Asian DX Review DX Bulletin, which is presently an online publication and is distributed free. It's also been active in organizing DXpeditions and promoting the hobby of radio DXing in general. And if you have feedback, loggings, etc. for publishing an Asian DX Review, you can contact the Indian DX Club International by email. Here's the address: idxc.international@gmail.com. Again, that's idxc.international@gmail.com. So thanks a lot to Sandipan Basu Malik and everyone there at the Asian DX Review, and congratulations to them for resuming the publication of their excellent DX Bulletin. Now we're